Over 22 million Kenyans will on Tuesday go to the polls to elect a president, members of parliament, members of the Senate, as well as representatives to the 1,600 county assemblies. Now, to just understand why this election is very important for Kenya, East Africa's biggest economy, I'm joined by a senior Kenyan journalist, Mr. James Smart, and he will take us through exactly why the election matters. Thank you for joining us. Maybe you could introduce yourself, tell us who you work for, and how many elections you've covered.
My name is James Smart. I work for the Nation Media Group. I have covered, this is my fourth election.
Now, this has been dubbed as one of the most competitive elections. Some people saying even one of the most important elections for the country. Why is that?
I think this is being the third election under the new constitution. The point that this brings is the perfection of democracy. The Kenyan democracy is getting perfected with this election. So in a way, Kenyans are seeing a representation, an increase in representation. They are seeing with this election that somehow they can find, the expression, in this election. So of all the things that we've seen with the new constitution, this election cements what Kenyans really want. We've seen over a period of time for the last two elections that Kenyans have been sending home a lot of representatives. In the National Assembly, it's upwards of 70%. Members of County Assembly, which is a lower seat, it is in the upwards of 85%. The governors and senators, it's also a high turnover. And this is the election that perhaps the Kenyan citizens are feeling it's to take control back from politics and have this sort of a functional democracy of what you're trying to build in this country.
Very tight race at the top between Deputy President William Ruto and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. First, who are these two men? So
for these two gentlemen who are at the top, their contrast will not be as wide as it is. They have, in terms of age, 20 years separates the two of them. In terms of ideology, William Ruto has been sort of part of a system. He's grown up in the Kanu politics and in government sort of politician. And that's why he's built his roots. So he understands government very well. And you see from his politics since then. Raila Odinga has built his politics from the opposition trenches, being part of multi-party democracy. He's worked very hard to build an opposition party that has stayed through many elections to his credit. So they couldn't be as different as that. And it's such a huge contrast. The thing that puts this election too close to call is the current economy status that this country is. And it's very strange that these candidates are almost running against themselves in a way. For Raila Odinga, who has been in multi-party democracy, he sort of finds himself being sort of awarded this by the system. So he's the system candidate. President Uhuru Kenyatta has, sort of taken him under his wing, and it's a very strange for him to be with his supporters. For William Ruto, who's a system person, he's running as an outsider, and he's a deputy president. So it couldn't be as confusing as it is, and a lot separates them, but then there's very little that is the contrast for Kenyans, given that we're in a very tough economic times, just not only globally, but the country and what has happened in the last 10 years of this government, the loans that have taken to, sort of put the country in an economic, situation that is a bit dire. Many young people are claiming that they have lost opportunities, they lost jobs, so they have complaints on stuff like this. Many people don't feel opportunities have been coming by with the Jubilee administration, and that has made this election, the messaging this election, to be a bit more tighter.
All right, let's get some analysis. Then we are joined via Zoom by Victor Adeng, a public policy analyst. Thanks very much for joining us here on SABC News. A warm welcome to you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right, what are your views then, as it really is crunch time for Kenya, just a few hours to go. How ready would you say Kenya is really for these important elections, especially as I read and as our reporter, Sarah Kimani, told us that, there are at this moment still some logistical issues that still need to be sort of ironed out?
Yeah, that's right. I think that the IEBC, the election management body, is on course with most of the preparations. We've seen that ballot papers have been sent out to different polling centers and polling stations. So I would say things are on course. We've had a press briefing just moments ago from the IEBC. We have an election. We have seen that two counties and one constituency where their elections have been suspended for some reason. That is Kakamega County and Mombasa County. But I think in my view, and from what we've seen in the past few weeks, all the preparations that we need from the IEBC, everything has, pretty much been on course.
Yeah, I want to talk about the importance of, opinion polls. The final 4 opinion polls that have indeed been published last week, they put Odinga ahead with a margin of 6 to 8 points. I mean, let's talk about who you see really actually taking it. And let's talk about this importance of public opinion polling. I mean, Ruto clearly doesn't like this very much because he said that this is nothing but fake news that's designed to sway their electorate. Your views?
Well, interesting that they have dismissed those polls, but the reality is that at least 4, legitimate or at least credible polling firms have put Raila Odinga ahead of William Ruto by at least, like you said, 6 to 9 points. Yeah. What they have not been very committal about is whether there is going to be a runoff. Only one research firm, TIFA, gave a scenario whereby, they excluded the undecided population. And in that case, they say if, that with that calculation, Odinga is ahead by, wins in the first round. But what we could say is, the polls have, they've pretty much covered what we hear when we speak to people out in the streets. Yeah.
And I mean, let's talk about whether or not we will see free, fair, and peaceful elections in Kenya. So far, it seems that things are going relatively okay. Apart from these logistical issues that you and I have both spoken about. I mean, will we see the outcome being well received by both parties, whoever takes it?
I believe because they have made commitments. Kenya Kwanza under William Ruto and Azimio under Raila Odinga have both made commitments that they're going to accept the outcome of the election. So and I want to believe that that's exactly what they're going to do. But the most important thing is Kenya has a history. We now have a history of heading to the Supreme Court if we feel or dissatisfied by the election outcome. Yeah. So that is one of the things we expect will mitigate any tensions or, violence. Should there be anything that leads us in that direction, which I don't think will happen. Yeah. So we are somewhat in a safe place with regard to the judiciary's independence. So I would say, we are hopeful. We're hopeful things will be fair. The election will be fair. The IBC, I believe, is working really hard to deliver a free and fair election. And Kenyans will turn out to vote tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mean, what's at stake for investors in Kenya's elections? They always do have a side. They generally, they might not say it, but they generally would want, they would have a clear favorite as investors who they'd want to see becoming the president of the country. What do you think, and who do you think that is?
That's a great question. I would say, I obviously, if investors are allied to Kenyatta or they have a preference for Kenyatta's candidate, then they will prefer Honorable Raila Odinga. But again, I think the most important thing for investors is economic. Is peace and security. If we don't have peace, irrespective of whoever is in power, whether it's their preferred candidate, then it doesn't really count. It doesn't matter. So I think the most important thing is, are the elections free and fair? And if there is any contestation, the Supreme Court is able to resolve that within the mandated period. And if that doesn't happen satisfactorily to whichever side, is there peace that lets Kenyans continue with their business as usual? So I think the investors would probably be more worried about safety and peace in general than whichever side. Although I want to emphasize that there might be, in a way, have a preferred candidate that they have not disclosed or we don't know about. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much for giving us your time, Sir Victor Radeng, a public policy analyst. Many thanks to you.
Thank you.